You might have noticed that recently the skeptics and the alt-right have been discussing things more, and one of the primary arguments I've seen being used during these live streams is the argument that an ethno-state cannot be formed without some violation of human rights or just outright violence. So I'm making this video in order to show that these things can be done without violence or human rights violations, and that by avoiding them now we're actually setting ourselves up for worse human rights violations in the future and certainly far worse violence. Okay, so the first method I'm going to call the de facto method. This is the method where you simply take an area that's full of the people you want to preserve and declare it a state. In the context of America, you could take a couple of states like Maine, Vermont, and New Hampshire and just say this is now a white ethno-state. You don't have to remove anyone for this method, and all you have to do is put immigration controls on those states. Since it's already a majority white area, any non-whites who are there will simply be bred out over time, choose to leave on their own, or simply live as a happy, unnoticeable minority in the state. There are still a bunch of European countries that this option works for, especially in Europe. We could take the countries where the migrants are still less than a couple percentage points, and we could cut a deal with them where they agree to have very few or no children, and in exchange they will be allowed to stay for the rest of their lives, and then all we have to do is stop inviting more immigrants. Time will take its course, and in a few generations there won't be any immigrants in the country. The country will be entirely made up of the native population. Method 2 adds on Method 1, where instead of just declaring a ethno-state and hoping that the immigrants who do live there eventually dwindle or disappear, we take an active approach to trying to remove the immigrants. We encourage them to return to their own homelands, and those that are resistant to returning to their homelands can be offered money or other benefits in exchange. Most of these immigrants come from countries where the currency is worth much less than the country they immigrated to. So you could even offer them something similar to the welfare that most of these people are already on. Smaller amount of welfare, but tell them that they can only receive it if they receive it to their home country. They can then use the power that this currency gives them in their homeland to get more bang for their buck. Most of the immigrants that are undesirable are only here for the benefits anyway. So by giving them the perks of living in our countries, while also giving them the perks of living in their home countries, they're probably quite likely to take that deal and spend German money in their home countries where they speak the language and actually feel like a part of the culture. Now, by using these two methods, all we're actually doing is reversing the process that got us in this situation in the first place. We're returning to the immigration policies of the past, we are sending all the shitheads back home, and we are making our countries back into the de facto white ethno-states that they used to be. Most European countries used to be majority European until the past few decades after the Second World War, where the countries rapidly filled with migrants. The important thing to remember here is that the state that we are living in right now isn't the natural state. It's completely different from the state we've been living in for the past thousands of years. Which is why, while I'd be over the moon if either of the first two methods got implemented, I tend to lean more towards the extreme methods that I'll go into now and try to provide some justifications for. I personally think that most of the European countries that have accepted a large amount of immigrants are beyond peaceful means for the most part. I think the first two methods should be used to try and get rid of the vast majority of the immigrants, but I'm also certain that there are a large group of immigrants who will not go peacefully. It's for these immigrants that I have no problem employing physical removal against them. We owe them nothing. Their residence in our countries is entirely benevolent. They are here because we have allowed them to be here, and we can stop allowing them to be here. When you combine this perspective with the idea that if the immigrant population keeps growing at the rate it is, that we're almost certainly bound for racial and religious conflict all throughout Europe, that the use of physical removal now is absolutely justified. There has been no population switch like this in the past that ended peacefully. There has never been a situation where so many people who were so radically different slowly became the majority of the country, while the original native population slowly and peacefully died off. These things always end in violence and straight up ethnic cleansing and genocide. The only option we're left with to initiate the minimum amount of violence necessary is to remove these people now before they can become a sizable population. If you think that removing 10 to 15% of our population will inevitably lead to violence, then what do you think is going to happen when these people are half of the population? All these people had to do was wait and outbreed us, and Europe would have been theirs. But they couldn't do that. They had to start bombing us, shooting us, and driving over us in their trucks of peace. If you think you can ignore groups, then you're just ignoring reality and the biological imperative to conquer and claim resources for your people. If you want to avoid violence, you have to act now to avert the disasters that will come in a multiracial society. If you're against the right of the European people to see themselves as a group and to see themselves as something that has the right to exist, then you're just in favor of giving Europe to immigrants. And I actually care about what my ancestors fought for. I actually care about ensuring that I get to hand a society worth living in down to my descendants. And anyone who tells you that it's impossible to reverse the demographic trends of the past few decades is either a moron or they're your enemy. They should be debunked, ridiculed, and then ignored. And we should move on trying to secure these countries for our descendants. So, achieving the ethno-state is nowhere near as hard as these people want you to believe. All we've got to do is close the borders, stop immigration, revoke the visas of immigrants here, and then all we're left with is foreigners who have achieved citizenship. These people can be drawn back to their home countries using bribes and benefits. After all of these people are gone, we're left with a very, very small amount of immigrants who can be broken up into two groups. Those immigrants who are happy living as a non-significant minority in a majority white nation, and those immigrants who are here to cause violence and fight us in the first place. The first group isn't a problem because they'll simply cease existing in time. And when it comes to the second group, we have full justification in using physical force to remove them. So I don't know what motivates these people to make these shitty arguments. I don't know why they can't think about this subject for more than a few seconds. Whatever the cause is, it doesn't matter because we are slowly but surely taking over the online space. More and more people are coming to see our ideas, and we're growing stronger every day. Styx keeps moving further and further to the right. Sargon is losing his mind and, whether he likes it or not, slowly accepting the premises of the alt-right. There has never been a better time to be right-wing on the internet than now. We are finally coming into our own, and I'm going to keep making videos chronicling that, and I'm going to keep making videos so I can participate in that. If you want to participate, I'd encourage you start your own channel and get as many right-wing voices on the internet as possible. Now is the time, more than ever, that we need them to get over that hump and shift the momentum towards the right. I'd encourage you to subscribe to me and other smaller channels and help in completely and utterly taking over the online space in the name of the right wing, the traditionalist, the nationalist, the identitarian.